Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin. This is Thursday, April the 11th, 2024. First item on the agenda is call to order. I'll do that with a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Present.
Alderman Potts, how do you vote?
Present.
Alderman Baggett, how do you vote?
Present.
And the chair votes present. Start to say yes. The second thing on the agenda is consideration of changes in the agenda and setting the agenda. If there's anything that anyone wishes to pull from the agenda that's not necessarily a voting item. All right, then proposed changes, are there any motions regarding changes to the agenda? This includes choosing a location for items removed from the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to relocate an item? Hearing none, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or changed.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Proper motions are a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call.
You don't even have to.
Okay. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The next item on the agenda is open to citizens to be heard on any issues or concerns, including those related to the items on the agenda. We should have submitted a speaker card. I see none. Is there anyone that wishes to address this committee on any item, whether it is or is not on the agenda? Seeing none, then let's go to approval of the minutes. The minutes for March the 7th, 2024, and, well, let's do it individually. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for March the 7th, 2024?
So moved.
Proper motion, is there a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote on the minutes. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Potts, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Baggett, how do
Yes.
you vote?
Yes.
Oh, and the chair votes yes. Motion passes 4-0. But let's do March 21st, 2024 Budget and Finance meeting. Any changes, corrections, deletions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Proper motion, a second.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote on that also. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Potts, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Baggett, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on that. Let's go to new business then. Discussion of fiscal year 2025 budget enhancements and priorities. We're going to the TV. Are you ready?
I'll kick it off if that's okay. Just a few comments. Thank you very much for
Accommodating me doing this virtually. I am in Boston as part of my ICMA board responsibilities and also attending a conference called Local Government Reimagined. And actually the topic is focusing on AI, artificial intelligence, and how it is impacting local governments as a tool and as just something that's part of our world today. So it's actually been really fascinating, and some things that I think we will continue to look at. As this item is one that we started last year based on your feedback in terms of providing an opportunity for the Budget and Finance Committee and the full board to process everything you've seen. You've been seeing budgets, budget presentations, and especially requests for budget enhancements, what we call program enhancements, since February. And you've seen well over 100 of us in reviewing our budget process a couple years ago was to give you some space as a board to process all of that, not just hearing it individually, but step back and add your voice in terms of priorities collectively when you look at all the items that are before you. So we're glad to have that. I think that was a great improvement in our process last year, and glad to have it again in this year's process. I will just say we are still in the midst of working through all sorts of elements. While we've hit sales tax numbers and exceeded them a little bit, which is all good. We aren't at the level of surpassing it that we were the last few years. So the projections, but also scrubbing budgets to look at areas to make sure we are right where we need to be and have a good assessment of the capacity that's there to provide additional services to the community and to meet emerging needs that we see in the community. So that is where we are. We'll continue to work on that. This all drives towards getting you a recommended budget from our team and specifically from me as city administrator by the first Friday in May. That is our target time to get that to you. And then the May budget and finance, I will present my recommended budget to the committee as well. So I will ask Michael to guide you through the specifics of what we got in your feedback and the different ways that we are taking that information, processing that information, and of course, welcome comments and feedback and more discussion to help shape what we try to do in the new budget for fiscal 25. Again, I thank our team for all the work that's gone into putting budgets before you and the information that you're looking at tonight. So I'll hand it over to Michael to walk you through the process, and then I'll maybe talk a little bit at the end as we talk about steps going forward.
Thank you, Eric.
Mike?
Good afternoon.
Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Budget and Finance Committee. So what we have attempted to do, and this is similar to what we did last year with one slight modification, we asked all of you to review 107 different program enhancement requests. So at your places are both a printed copy of this presentation as well as the ranked as your priorities 1 through 10. Sheet 2 is request was put forward. So as you can see in the top of page 4 of your handout, the Donaldson Creek Parkway and Lewisburg Pike Signal Project and the firefighter. That's one way to evaluate interest. Sheet 3, page 5 is the average ranking, and that is to take your rankings 1 through 10 and show you, quite honestly, collectively, where you each ranked them. So that puts the nearly 30 requests that you all had at least one vote for, 1 through 10. You can see 1 through 10 sort of where they fell. Sheet 4 is where we stopped this process last year, and that is to create a weighted ranking. And what that formula was and is to take the average ranking that's on sheet 3, div year, was that, as you can see on sheet 4, and I've highlighted it here on the screen, there were 2 items which were the top priorities from 2 of you that only got votes from 2 of you. And so you'll see that there's 2 that received 1 vote and 1 that received 2 votes, that from that way of dividing would put it in the top 10. Whereas there were 3 items that received 4 votes, and one of those would be the 20th priority. So what I tried to do, there's not a perfect way to do this, but what I tried to do for you is what I'm calling a modified weighted ranking. That's the final sheet on page 7. That reorders those weighted ranks by the first sheet, sheet 2, in terms of the frequency that they appear. So in this case, there's not a lot of change, but it means that those that got the highest votes, not by priority, but the most frequent number of votes are what fall in top 10. And then they are adjusted based upon that weighted ranking. So there's 15 shown on the screen. The red line is the top 10. The green line is the top 12 because the top 12 received at least 3 of 9 of you giving support. And there'd been questions why 10 and not 15 and not 5, and so I've put the 15 on the screen. Last year, we were able to fund 14 of your top 15. As Eric indicated, this is a tighter budget year. We don't know quite that we'll be able to get that far, but certainly on sort of the mathing here, as I like to say, and the approach to try to get you to at least a prioritized list of what those top 10 are.
No questions here, Michael. I think this is a good job.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this.
So with that, I will put up the last slide and then turn it back over to Eric to kind of lead the remainder of this item. As he indicated, today is the discussion of BOMA enhancements and general priorities with you. We will then go into bunker mode and continue building the budget and get together with Eric and the ACAs and budget team and staff and really kind of put everything together. 22 days from now, a budget needs to be in your hands. And that's May 3rd. And as Eric indicated, on May 9th, he will present to you his recommendation for you to consider a financing plan for the upcoming 12 months beginning July 1. Eric?
Yeah, I think that covers it. I'd like to
It up for the board really to have discussion about what you see here and any feedback you have about the priorities as they were put collectively and answer any questions you might have. We do look for opportunities in all these to get them done one way or another. Sometimes we're able to accomplish elements of this in the current budget. We may see capacity somewhere in a budget or in a fund that could help us get something done sooner in this year. So we look at all our best options to accomplish these higher priority items. And so but any feedback you have for us today and going forward is always welcomed. And I'll turn it back over. As Michael said, we're just a little over 3 weeks away from submitting something to you in terms of a recommended budget. And this feedback is very important, and we look forward to the discussion.
Any questions from anyone? Bev, any questions? You got,
Well, if this is just general feedback, which I think is what kind of, happy to kick it off. I thought this was a great methodology this year, and thanks for doing that and seeing that need to do the modified. I think that was the right thing to do. I think kind of one comment I would make, kind of how I thought through my rankings, and I think it's interesting to also note as I look at other aldermen's rankings, like you can kind of begin to see kind of the thought process behind different aldermen's priorities. Mine was really centered around, and this is the point of this comment, are things, every year when I look at these lists, and in the limited time that we get to hear from staff regarding various needs that they have operationally, it's hard for me to determine if, X department needs X piece of machinery. It's just hard to deliberate. So by not including those types of things on this kind of ranking, it's not saying that I don't think there's a need. So maybe even in the next budget year, thinking through, City Administrator Stuckey, that, I'm thinking more outside of, in the vein of things that I have some level of understanding on, like kind of more strategic priorities, rather than does parks need another lawnmower, or does streets need another whatever. And I think that as we look, maybe, and that's one thing that makes this hard, is all that kind of stuff is intermixed in between strategic priorities. And I think this is great. We've come a long way since the first one, and this is giving us the ability to give this kind of feedback. But I would say even further next year, we talk through how to, I don't even know, like, the 8 of us and the mayor are not going to have the operational knowledge to be able to begin to rank those intelligently. I mean, it's really kind of like, I trust everyone sitting across the table from me that they need what they say they need. But I don't know, I almost discounted a lot of those because I didn't know if they needed them or not. I know they all said they needed them. More strategic in nature from a But that was the one feedback. I thought it was good. I think the results are great. And that would be my only feedback on the process. I'll yield time for others to make comments and chime in later.
Eric, hopefully you're hearing us okay right now. See a head nod. Excellent.
Yes.
I thought it went even better than it did last year. All right. So all the feedback that you guys received, you implemented. The one thing that might have also helped in a 133-page document, as I was going back and forth page where you had all the previously approved budget items, such as the platform truck for streets. It was in last year's budget, but it didn't move forward. And I remember reading the comment down in the summary. It said, I was told to put this in again this year. So it would have been good to know, hey, this was approved, because that impacted the way I was thinking about, to your point, streets want something, sanitation wants something, parks wants a vehicle as well. They wanted a truck, I remember. But knowing it was previously approved weighs into the importance of it in that top 10 ranking. So I think that's my immediate feedback as far as the process goes.
Yep.
And maybe there's some other, we'll call them like appendix pages that provide some other summary related items of this is forecasted or this is planned, type of an approach. Or when I say plan and approach, obviously everybody's got a plan and approach here, but it's already aligned, Eric, in the bigger picture of where we're headed. So, I wanted 5 more things I could rank. I wanted 15, not 10. So it was very challenging to get to that point because, example, and I look at the list right now, you see several, for the most part, across the board, a lot of fire, a lot of police. My process was infrastructure. And we see a lot of infrastructure. And I know, Eric, you can't see it from there, but I even sat down as I was going through the process and I had a screenshot of our new vision statement, and I kept coming back to that when I was forced to make a decision. So I think that would also be good to include our mission, our values. We had the department listed there, but I think that would also keep us centered.
I will comment that. Go ahead, Eric.
Michael, I think you might be about to say what I was going to say. Good.
In each PER is required to follow the current quality services, quality of life experiences, or sustainable growth and economic prosperity. And next year, I'm going to have to learn new themes, so I don't know if I'll be able to rattle them off that fast. But that is provided there, kind of as a guide. But certainly next year, as you go through the new strategic plan and adopt new themes, we can reinforce that and provide.
After I made my selection, I went down to the bottom of the chart and then reread that, went back and reviewed.
Okay.
So, yeah, good process.
Yeah, I think going forward, we can maybe add that to the summary sheet.
Place that's something for us to look at. I just going back to some of Alderman Baggett's comments too. I agree that's a hard thing. That's a harder thing. Those more operational equipment related, and we'll keep looking at ways to provide as best context as we can. But I really do think your time is best spent looking at those broader policy, like what you want to achieve type of pieces. And that's where your input is probably most valuable. So I wouldn't be hung up on that too much, because that's where we really want to hear how are these things reflecting your goals and how you want to achieve things in the community. So I think that's okay, but we'll keep looking at ways to give you better context on equipment type things. And quite frankly, that's something that is more driven by the departments looking at operational needs and what their priorities are. And I always kind of look, especially, and it is one of these pieces of equipment that is something we do try to look to accommodate, and we've looked at a better, more sustainable to a better place long term. But I appreciate the feedback, and especially you all looking at the broader goals and how these items.
Auto fleet program we have on the equipment. and almost like a budget item, equipment needs and maintenance needs, and just almost like we're doing with autos now, where it's just kind of one of those annual things. Like, it's not a new piece of equipment every year, right? But if it's budgeted over time, that fund builds up and things can be replaced and maintained as need. It's not something, I don't see that as enhancement. I see that as we've committed at some point to buying a skid steer because we needed it. And like, when it gets old, like, we're going to need to replace it, right? Because the need probably, unless the need hasn't gone away, right? And so I think those, and that's where but I appreciate that. So as y'all continue to work, I know we've talked about this, but I think that's in the works. Just, that would help on the equipment. We can just kind of continue to not ignore them, but not prioritize them. But I didn't want the departments feeling like we didn't hear the requests that those are needed, because certainly they are. I think figuring out how to do that sustainably is.
Yeah. And Eric, not that we keep calling your name, you're just not in the room, so that's why we keep calling your name. I did find, and it's ranked number 9 on the list, it's replacing the HVAC thermostats in the main offices. I looked at that one, and I didn't rank it on mine because I felt that should have been an operational, that's a day-to-day environmental supporting our colleagues. And so I didn't put that in there because, as you said, we're looking bigger picture. We're looking at what our big vision is. And me allocating one of my top 10 for that, I didn't think was appropriate. Not that we don't need it fixed. I just felt like that should have just been done, right? And I know it's $70,000, so I know there's less expensive things, but when it comes to our public environment, I just think it's operational and needs to be done.
So you could say the sustainable funding model for facilities as well. That's the same thing we've said for equipment. I would say, I would echo for facilities like maintenance as well. Sorry, Alderman Berger.
Go ahead.
Whatever. Yeah, I thought that was operational too, and I had a hard time with that because I'm thinking people need, in our climate, they've got to have heat, they've got to have air to function, and you can't be in a building at 120 degrees or 100 degrees and work. So I thought that should be under operationals, but I ranked it. A couple things. This is a great system. I like it a lot. How do we improve it? Excuse me, by the way, I'm taking my hat off because my hair is wet from the outside. I ran through the rain clouds. So I apologize for that. But how do we improve it? For me personally, I think that if we're ranking these, sometimes it's just roll the dice, and it's like I'd like to have my department head right in front of me and saying, okay, we'll look at all these priorities. What are the top 3 that are just critical to you for your department? But it would also help, I think, if the aldermen. We would take these, as we did, and rank them. And then why not have a meeting around this round table with all the aldermen and the department heads? And after we bring in our rankings, then we talk about them. Because I could say, well, here's why I rank this. Now, and then other aldermen, or you say something, and we all go, wow, never thought of it that way, why we should rank it maybe 2 rather than 10. And so I like the input from the aldermen of why did you come up with that ranking? Mm-hmm. I told Eric this is one of the hardest things I've done. I mean, we've been doing this for years. But, hey, Greg. Yeah, you can. And, but it's still very difficult because I'm lacking information. And I'm lacking information from my colleagues that I want to hear, because I think if we really get down to the nitty gritty when we can bounce things off of one another and go, Clyde might say, I really think and believe that this should be really a top priority because, and I'm like, wow, Clyde, I never thought of it that way. That's really a brilliant way to look at it. And so I think then we could all go back as we were sitting at the table and start re-ranking and then come up with a real solid ranking system there. Excuse me. The other thing is, I think I already said that, having the department heads discuss their priorities right in front of us in a room if we're doing this with the aldermen. So let me look at mine. You know, I ranked pistols as number one. Nobody else did that. And I'm like, okay, it was, I thought, not that terribly expensive. I mean, it was not cheap. But what is the city government, why are we here? Safety, health, and welfare of our citizens. Okay, and then some other services. We have police and fire services, but that is health, safety, and welfare. And part of the welfare is also picking up our trash and keeping it clean and also supplying us with sewer and water. Bottom line, top line, that's what government's for. All the other stuff we put on government sometimes is not within, even in, shouldn't even be within our jurisdiction sometimes. But we do a lot of things. So I looked at safety. Then I looked at motorcycles and I said, well, what's the worst thing that happens in our city right now that everybody complains about? Traffic, and about calming traffic down and calming the speeders down. So I'm like, okay, we need those motorcycles out on the road because they can monitor our traffic better. And hazmat suits, safety again for training, because if our people are not trained well and we are lacking some of this equipment, that's really important. We talked about lead analyst. Well, our budget is very important, and analyzing all these things that from our department's extremely important. Infrastructure, a director of infrastructure, that's number one, because I probably should have put that as number one, because infrastructures are probably our number one thorn in the side for the city. And then I thought, well, exterior painting of the post office, that's 14th Street, probably get it within a day or two. But I'm looking at it going, wait a minute, we're a huge tourist city. Downtown, the way it looks is extremely important. We have the archives next to it. So that's why I ranked it, because that's my thinking. Now, is it that critical? I don't know. And lights on staircases. It said the grand staircase. Well, you know, I'm like, okay, take a number, get in line. But I thought of safety. Hotel motel tax takes a critical position because of all the projects we fund through it. And then the project management platform for capital projects, absolutely, because this is what we do. How do we manage our capital and projects? And so that's how I end up getting to the ranking. You know, could I change them? Could I rank them differently? Absolutely. But maybe we start getting together, Eric, and try to rank our priorities and get together and have that, you know, let's throw it out on a table with each other's rankings and have those more in-depth discussions. Anyway, that's how I see it. But anyway, I don't know if that's helpful or not to anybody, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Alderman Caesar, do you want to have a,
I was mainly coming to hear the conversation more than to share my opinions. But if you want me to walk through mine, I certainly can. I agree.
be on record?
I agree with what Alderman Berger was saying, is that this I believe, because of the expense and potentially the impact, is proper for us to all be in a process and maybe share some of mine. There were a couple of items that fell to the bottom and fell outside of my top 10, but probably could have stacked up as number 11, a lot of them, had we had a chance to speak and hear the department chairs give a little bit more thorough explanation. One of the things that kind of resonated in my mind was the pistols. I see it on a couple of other selections. I feel like we equip our police force right now with handguns, and I would want to know, really, other than it being potentially the next standard of care, what are some of the other reasons we should make this multi-$100,000 investment in our police department? And are the equipment that we're giving them right now subpar? And if so, I think this is probably the most important statement I'll make today. Are there other resources, buckets of money out there that we could dip into to supplement a SWAT vehicle? Is there Homeland Security dollars that are out there? Are there other pockets of money? And maybe I see a deep breath over there that potentially we could get where we're not spending $380,000 out of our taxpayer funds, but at the city level, but could it be supplemented? And so I want a couple of more details on some of these things before I move them up. So that's I hope all that I can share. If there's any particular questions about rankings of things that I've placed here, I'm happy to provide additional.
Alderman Peterson?
Well, people have already said it. People have already said a lot already. Anything. There are a lot more projects that are needed and are very important than we could put in 10.
Chair, may I make one more?
Go ahead.
There are also some things that will pay for themselves that I think that I'd like for the budget team and the city administrator to consider. For instance, the security information event management system. It's, I assume, for our IT security, right? I assume, is that what, yeah, for gauging threats and better tracking that. As you all know, and I'm in the insurance world and deal in cyber as quite extensively, and one event and your $75,000, you prevent one event and your $75,000 is paid for, or you protect yourself against, potential events. So I think those kinds of investments pay for themselves. The hotel motel occupancy tax audit, again, small number, but that's going to pay for itself, right? If we have better knowledge around, I assume, I don't know the scope of the audit, but I assume that that is there to so that we're better able to manage and understand that data, which would hopefully lead to additional funds or more strategic planning around those funds.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment on that item?
Yes.
The last time the hotel motel audit was performed in cooperation with the county and Brentwood, while there was the auditing expense, there was findings for additional revenue from the audit that while we, of course, for accounting purposes have to book that in a different, that's actually a revenue and not an expense. It was it paid for itself.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's just we have to record revenues and expenses the way we do, but it did result in more revenue than the cost of the audit was.
And it may or may not, but it's probably a good thing. The last thing I'll say is the project management platform for capital projects. I know for a fact if we're spending our time in the engineering and building neighborhood services, wherever the capital project might be, I think a lot of them are managed obviously through the engineering department and maybe some through parks, but that just, if you can shave off time efficiency of staff, 10%, a year, if you can improve some efficiency by 10% on capital projects, and in the water department too, I left the water, but that pays for itself, right? If there's a better way to manage these things. So that's the only thing I'd encourage as the administrative team looks at this is some of the ones that maybe didn't make the top 10, but might actually have, maybe didn't pay for all of it, but might actually lead to more efficient and cost saving somewhere else, like staff time. I think those need to be identified and prioritized, and as I know you would.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. So in alignment with what Alderman Baggett was just saying, two of my top 10 were not in the top 10. They were actually 12 and 15, but along those same lines, I looked at one of them here was the longevity modernization. And after I sat back down and I reread, again, it was a great document, 133 pages, if anybody wants to go read it. It was great from the standpoint of when I couldn't remember, and I went back and I looked at my notes, and then I read this. I'm like, this is long-term planning. This is where we need to be. And it's a bigger vision, going back to Eric, what you were saying a moment ago, is thinking bigger and going bigger. So I do want to say that as Michael has probably run the numbers, and actually before I say this, the other one was the project management platform. And I would hope that even though these were, again, 12 and 15, as they were ranked over on the final page 7, is that Eric, you and other departmental leaders that are going to be looking at this, look at those things that not only drive revenue, but drive long-term impact on the city of Franklin. And some of those fell outside the top 10. And I just want to be on record for saying that we're talking about traffic, we're talking about infrastructure that's needed. And those roles that are outside the top 10, that everybody listed, they have a significant impact. And right now, we know that we're hurting in some areas. So I just want to make sure that everybody's focused on that. Mr. Chair?
This was, may I say one thing? This is a great example of why we need that second meeting, Eric, because this is what we need to be hearing after we bring in our rankings. And we're going like, well, I see the importance of this, but I'm not so sure about this. Just hearing you talk about the longevity, it's so important. And, and when you bring that up, I think all the aldermen should, if they want to, weigh in on it. And then we all get a different perspective. And we may change our ranking or we may not, but at least we have that information so we can make a better informed opinion and choice. So I think that was a good example.
And the chief, I was just looking here at number 10 was the armored vehicle, and I think the chief said the other night that we were proposing, or what was being proposed by the city administrator for the pay changes was her top priority. And so when you hear that too, that happened even after we did this ranking, and although I think the armored vehicle might be well needed, but also she just told me that was her top priority. And so that absolutely changes, the way I would look at even if it was either or, right? I mean, that she's just told us, right, that's her top priority, and it's more expensive than the armored vehicle. Not that we don't need it. I'm just, those kinds of things, I agree, Bev, that the Alderman Berger, this is good discussion and changes my mind on things.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably good for administration to hear.
And I would also ask, how often do we need an armored vehicle? What do we use now? What do we have available? Do we have other municipalities that have an armored vehicle we could call in if we needed one? So I think that also plays into how we would rank that. Yeah.
Well, on that one specifically, actually part of what we know is that there isn't available to us. That's why the department put in for it. At one point, Williamson County had a vehicle along those lines and they no longer do. And so that's why they identified that as a need for our team to have that. So that plays into it. There's a lot of moving parts to these. And so this feedback is great. And we keep looking at ways to give you the opportunity to step back and look at the big picture. And that's what we're trying to do. And we'll keep looking at ways to do that without burdening you with too much time, additional time in the meeting setting. But a lot of those priorities are covered in each of these individual meetings we had in February and March and those meetings. And this is an opportunity to put it in context. I do want to comment briefly on the longevity piece. I think Alderman Potts touched on that pretty well. But it really is it's a compensation and competitiveness issue as well. We haven't adjusted that longevity structure in over 20 years. And it is a place we talk about where we may not be as competitive. We talked about that with police pay on Tuesday, where we had been highly competitive and lost some ground. Longevity is an example of that across our whole organization. Others are doing more, and this gets us in line with the market and is a nice recognition for folks for their tenure with the city. So this one will probably rank a little higher as I look at it, just because I know that context. And we shared some of that, but I think that might have gotten lost in some of the translation of a list of 107 of these things. So, nothing's perfect, but this feedback is very, very helpful. So, and we'll keep looking at how to give you a chance to weigh things better together, because there's a lot of complexity. And the other element is we have specific funding sources and opportunities that are really tailored to certain ones that will help them be more successful and maybe takes a little of the pressure off on some of these because there's a specific area to fund it from. The hotel motel tax audit comes right out of that fund. We also are partnering with the county in Brentwood and getting it done. I mean, there's just a lot of things that make that a much easier one to accomplish than maybe some of them that's just straight has to, or the only option truly is the general fund, which has lots of demands on it, lots of pressure. So there's a lot of factors, and that's part of what your budget team and that I work on real closely to try to meet as many needs as we can, and we'll keep working on that. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on that.
Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Chair letting me ask this additional follow-up question on the
My
longevity.
top 10, and I didn't have the additional context that it's been more, or at least I didn't recall the additional context that it's been more than 10 years since we've revisited it. In today's world where people staying in one job for 20 or 30 years is becoming more and more uncommon than it is common, I think it's important that whether we approve this as one of the projects for this PER or we need to look into this outside of this, I think reducing it from starting to get those longevity bonuses after 5 years, moving it to 2 is something we really should consider for the betterment of retaining all of our employees and helping them know that we appreciate the work they do when they come to work every day for the city of Franklin.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. As I'm looking at this, and I even thought about this when I was doing my initial ranking, and I'm not saying that it was right or that it was wrong. I just want to understand more of the background of why these two were included. But right now, when we look at slide or page 7, it's the number 2 and number 3. It's the 2 signal projects. And everybody agreed it needed to be done. It ranked number 2 and number 3. But why did we not have other TOC or other projects similar to that in nature?
The latitude to submit the program enhancement requests. Any new people, any new project, any new equipment, any new idea, any new program that they wish to submit. Again, their guidance is hopefully relatively straightforward. Tell us the amount of resources you need to do the job you're doing today. That's your base. And everything else is a program enhancement. Those were the 2 that were submitted via this process. And again, as I like to say, accounting is science and budgeting is alchemy. There's an aspect of this process that has these larger cost elements, but they're too small necessarily to be on your capital improvements investment plan. And so this is one of those kind of in the threshold. You figure you can come up with enough money to do it because everybody does agree that it needs to be done. But we rely upon the departments to ask and to put forward what they need. And one of the other points that was raised is not just perhaps those projects which were previously funded that have come back, which is a rarer occurrence in your budgeting process, but those projects which this might be their second, third, fourth year that they've been requested. And we encourage departments to do that because it helps us and helps you really get an idea of long-term planning, of that these are things that you may not need this year, but we really need to be looking at certainly by 27, 28, 30.
Thank you, Michael.
Sir.
And part, oh, go ahead.
I would add to that, I think Michael has hit it pretty well, but I would add, there is a base budget item that does get at signal improvements and signal timing and those kind of baseline operational elements. These fall just a little bit beyond the scope of what a typical base budget can handle. So, and Michael described it well too. It's kind of falls between what we have in the base budget and that level and what is likely to get attention in the CIP. So this has evolved over time as fitting that, and the departments help us identify it. And so it does kind of meet that need beyond what's in the base budget, but maybe not big enough to capture the attention that it might need in the CIP. So we kind of live in both worlds because these were also submitted, I think, as part of the CIP, but we saw this as probably the better opportunity to get it done and have chipped away at the planning for this for a couple years. And now, especially the Donaldson signal, this would implement that in the next fiscal year. And then we get close to the South Margin piece coming forward. And again, we also look for grant opportunities for these as well. So,
To your point, last thing on process, I've noticed that some departments take your advice and add the projects that they think they might need this year, next year, and maybe 3 to 5 years down the line. And so I think that too also becomes complex for us in this process. So I think Parks did it well this year, where they had a couple of separate slides by year of need, which helped me frame in not just a standard PER. It helped me frame like that's why that's there, right, and not just on the list. And I don't know if there's a way to do that for the other departments and that helps us understand what is more immediate and what isn't, right? Because I think if I knew, there's lots on the fire, and lots on police, and I know a lot of that's there because it's not. No one's expecting for it to be funded this year, or maybe realistically, there's not going to be $7 million of PERs for one department,
Right.
So I have to assume that a lot of that is expected to be done in the future. And so maybe if and I don't know, y'all can figure out how to do it, but so that we can hone in on them.
We have encouraged, and if you in the PER forms now, there is a budget year and an expected year. And so we definitely encourage the ability to delineate between those two. Now, again, back to the question of equipment that's been raised, that form has been modified principally to accommodate that equipment planning, because it is taking 2 to 3 years to get a fire truck. And so we know, and that helps us as we build the long-range financial model for the general fund, that's a 5-year outlook that, we're going to need to make sure that in fiscal 27 or 28, that replacement $3 million has got to be there if you want to maintain, that equipment that you currently have. But we can certainly work to encourage more.
Any other questions?
I have one more comment. Here's just an idea about something that when we were talking about the armored vehicle. So I was saying, how often do we really need one? And Eric mentioned that there was none other armored vehicle in the area. Now I assume Nashville probably has one. They should have one. But Nashville, that seems like that's logical for them to have it because of the dense urban area and the population. But maybe what we do is get together and partner with some other municipalities, and we all go in, and we can even find a grant that can help cover that if we're going to be sharing it with another municipality. I don't know what parameters you would have to be under to do such a program, but I would think it would be impossible to do something like that. So we can get our mayors and administrators together with these cities and maybe identify other things that are very rarely used, but boy, if you ever need it, it's there. And so we host it, somebody hosts that in their particular garage or place or whatever, besides an armored vehicle, maybe something else too. So we could look at that and be more wise in how we spend money and partner, because we partner a lot with other municipalities on things.
And if we have done some of that with, and I think Alderman Caesar mentioned this, we have done
This
some of the
type of group funding and planning with the Homeland Security District, and Chief Johnson works closely with that, and that might be an option. I think we have looked at that. It's a timing and availability. Look at that opportunity, and you're right, we have done a lot of partnership, especially on public safety over the last several years. When you look at the radio system, you look at dispatch, you look at some of the other things we've done. We'll have a little more dialogue on our options with that, but we do see it as a important resource too.
2 or 3 comments. I'm not sure that I'm not sure about whether or not the 1 through 10 or a maximum number that we can put into this. So in other words, what I'm saying is if you were telling us, hey, we've got $1 million, you go through and pick out the ones that you think are the most important. Not necessarily are you ranking them by what's most important or not most important, but by the total amount that you've got. And then, because that could kick out that armored vehicle at $354,000 or whatever it was then. So I'm not sure that what we've done is fine. The only problem with what we've done is if somebody ranks something that's way out of what the other 7, and it skews your numbers up there if you allow it to skew those numbers. And I'll pick on myself because I think I put burn building repairs, I'll give it a 1. So it was 10. Okay. Well, that was the only one that voted on the burn building repair. That vote probably should not even be counted on that list. And, I think we need to maybe look at that. I would suggest to those of us who are just dying to have some more meetings, every one of you who are dying to have some more meetings, we had meetings where the department heads were here. They explained their needs. They presented all of those enhancements to us, and we didn't lock those doors back there. So you had an opportunity to be here. I think Eric has to go through this himself and understand what we can spend, what we can't spend, and do some of the things that we're saying that we need to do here. But we can have some more meetings, all right, and that's fine if we want to. I have no objections to that, and we've got plenty of them coming up. But I'm not sure that you haven't already had an opportunity to listen to the department heads. I think I have anyway. Okay, so
Yeah, well, some of us, we do listen at home, and we watch the budget
Yeah.
meetings, and I see them, and I see the department heads tell us, but and your point's well taken, and I agree with that. We maybe shouldn't rank them like 1 to 10, we just rank 10 of them, and
Right.
don't put in rank, I like that idea better. And then have the meeting where we can all just vet it out together, because I really value people's input. I mean, everybody has a different perspective on things. You have an insurance perspective too, that you bring, and a business perspective, and different perspectives. That's what makes the board really so good, is because we all come from different backgrounds. And I think when we're looking at these things, people have really intelligent insights sometimes to add. And if we had any meeting at all, that would be the meeting I would have. So,
And Michael can say, because he probably has a better idea, we probably met, 15, 20 hours? On all of the meetings.
Probably a little less than that
Probably
this
a little less
year.
than that?
A few of them may have felt like they were that long, but
The first.
the actual timing was.
First one felt half of that.
What we've tried to do, of course, is to streamline those presentations more than they used to be, so that by having the program area present on the same day, yes, Public Safety Day is a longer day. Well, then it's understandable when half your general fund budget is just those two departments. But trying to get that degree of streamlining, every minute saved matters. Your time is valuable, staff's time is valuable, the citizens' time is valuable. So we can certainly, again, meetings like this and feedback like this allows us to continually do the process improvements. Mr. Chair.
I will say the one other thing. If we identified where the revenue is coming from against the different projects, because we know that not all of that's coming through the general fund. We know it's coming through hotel, motel tax. We know it's coming through possibly impact fees on some of this stuff right here when you're going to put up a new traffic signal, if it's growth related, whatever. So it might help also, and I know we're asking you to do even more than what you're doing on this, and this is good. I like this, and I like, because each year it gets better. So that's what you said you were striving to do with the department heads. Each year it gets better, and each year this gets better. But I think there are probably some things that because I didn't look at money. I didn't either. Yeah, I didn't look at money. But there's $1 million between some of us difference.
That's right. A question for Eric. Is there an item that was not included in one of in the top modified weighted ranking? I mean, I guess you're going to say all 15, but that you would need feedback, or is there something that we didn't rank that, like longevity pay, like hearing you say what you said about longevity pay would have totally changed, and that would have been in my top 10. Is there anything that is not on our list that you would like our feedback on? And sorry. Yeah.
Biggest one, that's the biggest one that jumped out to me. Was that, that
Piece, just because I know how that fits into a broader need to update our compensation plan. It's not the biggest element, but I think it just adds an element and catches us up with a place where we had lagged behind. It also provides an annual recognition to folks. And in fact, the way it was put together, Michael helped pull this together, is that we could also blend it with the holiday bonus. So people get that longevity pay at the end of November, and it feeds right into the holiday season where folks would like that little extra money
Sure.
there the most. So it kind of blended all that together, and then to do it starting at everybody will get something, but starting the longevity piece from year 2 on, and that it happens every year and not every 5 years, that all that just fits so much better, and also fits some of the feedback we got in employee engagement discussions that we've been having over the last year and a half or so. So that's the one, and that's just more that we know about other pieces, and I maybe should have hit it a little harder when we talked about it. But that's the one when I look at your list that I know I will put probably higher, and I think I'm sensing from you all that you understand that logic, and it's still a fairly highly ranked item. So I think that's the one that really jumped off the page to me as one I would rate higher. No, I don't have any others that I would really highlight. There's so many valuable ones. I don't know if Michael, Christine have anything that they know from the discussion that they think that fall into that must have. And we will be looking at things that may have a little more operational importance, but maybe not the biggest number on it. We have that's part of what we need to be sensitive to, and we'll make sure we fill in those gaps as well, and help explain if something was lower, why it moved up, and fits a critical need operationally.
I would just add, when we intentionally don't. Usually, both in the when we've asked you to review requests, we don't give you a dollar target every time, because we want you to focus on what is most important. And we will do everything we can to maximize how to finance these. Just like in capital, there's certain pots of money that can only be used for certain things. And in some of these that are one-time projects, using one-time sources of revenue are very appropriate, versus others of these, like longevity, that you would work into your recurring regular revenue stream. That's our fun challenge in the next 22 days.
Are we looking at additional projects tonight at all? Eric, is that coming into play today? We're not looking at the additional projects we added, are we? That we wanted to be considered?
That's in CIP.
Yeah.
Separate discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
Except-
Because I got a bug.
Yeah.
You sure you don't stick around?
I have another engagement.
Oh, I thought maybe you might enjoy this meeting. All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Alderman Berger. Thank you, Alderman Gregory. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate your hookup and us getting through this part of the meeting. Let's go then. If there's no other discussion on budget enhancement priorities, let's go to budget presentation, transit. Michael, you want to lead off? Verna's not here.
Sure, happy to. There are, as we alluded to earlier, we budget by what we call program area, And the Franklin Transit Authority fits under the Community and Economic Development Program area led by Assistant City Administrator Girth, who can't be with us today. But the people who are up at the table need no introduction. You've seen them before. So I'm happy to turn it over to Debbie and her team. And there's a little bit of this presentation that I'll chime back in on because there's an element to it that is not requested directly from the Franklin Transit Authority, but is part of our continuing obligations and funding from the city directly. So, but when that moment comes up, I'll get to it. But other than that, take it away, Debbie.
So much. Thank you. Thank you all for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to present our proposed budget to you again this year. And joining me today, I believe John Schwartz, who's the chairman, is here.
I'm here, but if you get a little closer to the microphone.
A little closer? Sure.
That'd be good. Thank you.
How about that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. There we
Would you
go.
like to join us? You sure?
Our Kelly Bears, our CFO, and Stanton Higgs is our COO. So we are here, and we are thrilled to be here. As you all know, Patrick Baggett is our alderman that serves on the Transit Authority, and we appreciate that so much. The purpose of transit, as you all know, is to connect people and places by providing a safe, effective, and affordable transportation services. The responsibilities are planning, operations, and management of the small urban transit service on behalf of the Franklin Transit Authority that serves the city of Franklin. Runs 6 days a week. We have fixed route service with 2 fixed routes and Todd service. And coming soon is the microtransit service. We'll be hearing, which you've heard a lot about. The TMA is the contractor of record for the operations and management on behalf of the Franklin Transit Authority. The highlights of this year, and this one is not listed up there, but I have to share it with you, and I think most of you have heard about it. But the Federal Transit Administration recognized in our most recent triennial review, which is a big review the Federal Transit does of all the transit agencies. They're done every 5 years. They experienced no findings in our most recent review, which covers 23 review areas. And to quote David Powell with the Federal Transit Administration, a Federal Transit Administration triennial review with no findings is a rare occurrence. This is our 5th one we have done, and so this was our most recent, and so I just wanted, that was a huge highlight for us this year, and I wanted to share that with you. We are excited to report that the ridership is trending upward, estimating a 13% increase over last year, system-wide, over last year's numbers. I believe those numbers will be around 86,500. And the largest increase, for those of you who have been part of this journey for a long time, the largest increase this past year has been in the TOD service, the Transit on Demand. So to address that, we have increased the capacity and coverage of the TOD service because we were reaching capacity, and you never want to have to turn somebody down, but we needed to increase our capacity in coverage so that wouldn't happen. It's remarkable, the citizens of Franklin that use this service to get back and forth to work. And then a large part of them use the service to get back and forth to school, our high schoolers. And that is remarkable. And then their medical appointments and, regular services and stuff like that. But this year, the TMA, on behalf of Franklin Transit, procured 4 new vehicles. These were procured, as you know, over the past 3 years, there's been a huge backlog, and equipment was not available, and so we are trying to play catch-up with that, because those vehicles, we need to have safe vehicles for those folks to be out there, and these were replacement vehicles. Fortunately, the supply chain issues are beginning to lessen. We currently partner with Brandwise. I don't know if any of you don't follow us on social media. You Alderman Potts follow us. You do a great job following us on social media, and we appreciate that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. And
you guys are doing a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, we're all there. And we've really increased that. And I love technology when it works like this. We do a geofencing technology that reaches customers who are within walking distance of our fixed routes. And that's who we target. And so it's fantastic. It's paid off very well. Giving people a reason to ride transit is sometimes necessary. And so if you show it to them, if you tell them about it, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback about that. We're also on Twitter. The transit shelters installation project on Carruthers continues. Majority of the approved locations have been surveyed and approved. So next steps on this will be working with property owners on the ROI and or construction. And I do want to say hats off to the City of Franklin team who we've worked with relative to this transit shelter project. They have been phenomenal. They have been very helpful to us. The microtransit project for Cool Springs was delayed due to labor shortages for drivers this past year. I think we all can relate to that. In the last 90 days, the market has improved, and so we are moving forward with implementing that program this year. Yay. As you will recall, we secured a CMAQ grant for this. TDOT awarded us that grant and are enthusiastic for us to move forward. Statistics as they stand now, we anticipate, like I said, 86,500 or 87,000 roundup passenger trips. A major increase last year was 74.5. Breakdown, again, 50% employment trips, 15 student trips, 15 medical, and 15 citywide events, and then 5% like shopping, 5% of that's shopping and those kind of social services. We continue to receive weekly feedback from our veterans and military community because we offer free rides to them on the fixed routes. That goes a long way, and they are most appreciative. The org chart is pretty standard as it has been. Again, the people that work on our team, all of the people that work with transit are TMA employees, and they are incredible. Getting onto our budget, Michael, that slide, I guess. Okay, there we go. The total revenues, $4,354,152. 73.5% of that TMA brings to the table with grants, federal, state grants. We bring to the table of our budget, 73.5 of that we bring. We have had an increase in federal funding that supports operations, which was exciting. Like I said, about the CMAQ grant for microtransit. And Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you with your little footnote here, your special note.
So I'll end this slide and then begin the next one. And this has to do with the proposed city subsidy for the transit fund in this upcoming year. It is higher by approximately $232,000. Now, part of that is due to slightly less projected intergovernmental revenues for the transit system compared to 24. That's only about 110,000 or so. The balance is related to the moving of a position. We talked about this during the police budget, but the actual budgeting and accounting for the transit inspector, that is the person that formerly was known as the parking ambassador, is being moved to this fund, which leads me to the beginning of expenses. And so you see a very, very large increase in personnel. Don't be alarmed at the 720% increase year over year, because that's the full year cost of moving a full-time position into the transit fund. It is a net zero increase because you're moving it out of police and you're moving it into transit. And this is based upon guidance we've received on how that position should be structured. There are there's a full-time and a part-time person budgeted within the personnel item in the transit fund now, the contract compliance analyst who is part-time, who's been there now for several years, and then the full-time transit inspector.
Thank you
Debbie.
so much. Thank you so much. So back to our part. What we have, like most transit agencies, we have budgeted an increase in fuel, y'all heard about $5 gas coming. Maintenance, driver recruitment, salaries, cleaning, and general inflation. Those are just across the board. I think that's not only true with transit, that's true with a lot of businesses across the board. The continuation of the transit shelters in Carruthers, as I previously mentioned. You were talking about safety and security earlier. With our buses, we make sure that they have cameras on board, behind, on them, all the way around. And so we are upgrading those cameras. It's that time for us to do that. The current ones we have need to be upgraded. And so those are pretty much the highlights. We will be marketing, of course, with the rollout of the microtransit specific to that to meet Cool Springs. We do have the city's portion of our planning budget is $10,000, which is a 10% match. We have secured funds and set aside to do a transit study from the factory to the Columbia Avenue corridor, if that comes up and becomes the wish of the authority. And we've been talking about that. Alderman Baggett has been leading that charge. And so that's what those would be used towards. And so we are excited about the potential of that. And then capital budget, the city's portion, again, 10% match, which makes the city's portion of that 41%. Shelters, more replacement vehicles, trying to catch up again. We're still trying to catch up on the vehicles. So that's our budget. We appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. If you have any questions of us, I've got the pros here, and as far as the nitty-gritty. And so, but as always, your support has been invaluable. And the people who write us, you don't need transit unless you need it. And to those who need it, it's everything. That's how they get to work. That's how they get to school. That's how they get to the doctor's appointment and so forth and so on. It's a quality of life. So thank you for this time, for your time. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Any comments from? No comments? All right.
Well, thank
And-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, lady.
Michael and fellow members. Item 5, budget presentation, water management.
We'll have Mr. Hilty make an initial comment regarding the final department in his portfolio and take it from there. Mark?
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time today. Like to introduce Michelle Hatcher. You've probably met her,
Are you
Director
new
of
to the team?
Water Management.
We haven't seen you around much.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that? Go for it.
So save the best for last. That's what I like to say. So we are, we pulled ours kind of out of the rest of the Public Works presentations. So obviously this first slide, our vision is kind of the same as it's been every year, to kind of provide high quality services and enhance the quality of life in Franklin through as little with the distribution and collection, the water plant, wastewater plant, our reclaim service, for as little cost as we can try and be as customer focused as we can be. Our organizational chart is this next one. So finance did a fantastic job at color coding it this year, so it's easier to read. We have 99 authorized positions. We currently have 7 vacancies kind of throughout the department in different areas. So we have 3 in the service division, 2 in the and 2 at each plant right now, and then all of the utility admin, which is the green, is filled. Do you have any questions? Okay. So I think this is where I turn it over to Michael to do the actual heavy lifting.
Tag team. This will be a tag team effort. So first item, certainly for the Water Management Fund, is personnel. You look, there's an increase of $917,000, or about 9.2%. That includes both a 5% base budgeted wage increase, which is the standard we carry in the general fund and in the other funds. That is still to be determined what that amount will be. But when you plan for the individual funds, you have to include that amount when you're doing this, as well as higher medical premiums, as we have done throughout all the budgets that you've seen. So that accounts for that increase in that regard. Now, I will tell you, all of that's going to be refined in the last time you're going to see that statement is going to be this slide right here, because we will immediately start going and getting actual amounts and plans and what have you. Under operations, you see an increase of $2.1 million or 8.6%. That really gets you into three different categories. Number one, there is additional costs for water purchase. That's $344,600. That's based both upon increasing costs to buy the water itself, as well as the current year's budget was slightly under what we anticipate spending. That, of course, is terribly dependent, as this entire budget in industry is, on the weather. If it's a dry year, it's different than if it's a wet year. $720,000 is an accounting exercise. Items which used to be in capital, or we would have considered budgeting in the next slide, are being budgeted here in operations. And that's regarding what would have been considered fixed assets for the rehabilitation of individual lines. And I&I and those sorts of things that are more considered operational maintenance in nature, and not necessarily from a formal accounting standpoint, new capital infrastructure. And then finally, roughly close to $1 million for additional costs of bringing the water reclamation facility fully online. It is a much more efficient facility than what you had before, but chemicals cost more than they did, the utilities cost more, and contractual services related to properly maintaining it and operating it are higher than the previous year. And then finally, the largest increase in any particular area is within capital. And that's a 34% increase, going from $12.9 million to $17.4 million. The vast majority of that increase, however, is related to the ARPA-related wastewater projects, and namely, remind me.
The downtown area improvements on Lewisburg. We're doing stuff out at the plant, and then we received the largest allocation in Tennessee for the reuse work that we've done.
And if I may make a comment, that the ARPA programs that go through the Tennessee State Department of Environment and Conservation do have local matches required, and so that is something that is also having to be funded with local dollars. So the direct ARPA project did not have a match. I believe that's the Lewisburg, even though there's going to be additional work performed with city funds. But the actual TDOT grants do have local matches required. I believe it was 35% was one program, and then there was a lower match with the latest.
15. Was it 15% for reuse and then 35% for?
And it was 35% for the first program, that
20 for.
And it was lower for the second program that we went through. So those local matches do have to be accounted for.
I just want to ask, I always think of as water as being its own, it produces its own money. It's not tax money, right?
It's water and sewer. It's matching the grants. But that, when I say local funds, that's not.
Okay.
I mean the water and our own utilities.
Ratepayer funds.
Yes. Yes, that's provided by the water and sewer fund.
I thought so, but it just sounded a little different, and I just wanted to make sure that it has to pay for itself.
Yes, the utility does have to fund those matches, but it is required for the programs going through TDEC.
And in related to ARPA, the report is due April 30th.
April 30th, here in the next couple weeks, is the next report that's due to the U.S. Treasury, and that is for expenditures that were made through March 31st, as well as the other reporting requirements of how we're doing on the the rest of what's being programmed. So we are finishing that up.
So you've seen, we've talked a lot about ARPA over the last several years as the program got initiated, and we've talked deadlines, we've talked a lot about planning. This is the year, especially in the water management, where you're actually going to see that expense actually get expensed.
Because there is a requirement to place projects under contract by the end of 2024. Now, we have a little bit of flexibility with the projects on ARPA that are running through the state because they actually allow the contract between the city and the state to serve as what they say is the requirement for being under contract because we're a subrecipient. But we also are very happy that there is still a deadline to spend all the money by the end of 26. So really, if you don't get those projects underway by the end of calendar year 2024, you'll probably have a hard time getting the project spent and completed by the end of calendar year 2026. So that's why certainly our water management department, you're starting to see those contracts coming to the board, or they're getting closer to coming to the board so that they can get all that work performed by the end of calendar year 2026.
The just as Christine was saying, so the Lewisburg project will be awarded to on the next board meeting. So or it'll go to work session on the April 23rd meeting, and the plant and then voted the first meeting in May, and then the plant we're still working out some final details. If we can get that on the April 23rd, it will be there. Otherwise, it'll be the next one. Okay, so the next one, so we're going to go into our enhancement request. Is it any questions on that so far? Okay. All right, so we have the first enhancement we have is a new vehicle. So we provide vehicles to our inspectors. A couple of years ago, we added a infrastructure manager who was a promotion of our senior inspector, and then we promoted one of our inspectors to the senior inspector. So then to backfill, so they took all of their vehicles with them, and then to backfill the inspector position, that's what this is. He doesn't currently have a vehicle. He's traveling with other people to go to all of the sites he goes to around the city. So that's what this one is for. So utility inspectors, obviously look at all the third-party developments and the infrastructure, water and sewer that's going into the ground to make sure it's per, our compliance specs. The next one we've got is a new performance asset management system for the vertical assets that we have. So with the plant coming online, we have a great deal of vertical assets. The current system we have is locational based, and these are vertical. So these are pumps. These are our thermal hydrolysis system, where all of those assets may be on top of each other, and they're just harder to record. So this system is based for that. The wording did not copy over correctly, so the slide is a little bit incorrect. I apologize for that. But it is a system. So this is the one-time fee that will allow us to implement the system. So we are really looking to change the way that we maintain the assets that we have. So from really a very reactionary basis of let's run it until it fails, and then it's all held to fix it as quickly as we can, to really taking a proactive. We've hired Erica's overfilled some positions to get us better in the maintenance department to take. To do the proper maintenance of things, changing the oil, the vibratory analysis. We have a lot of heat trace to make sure that's working. And we don't really have a good way of documenting that, and then to making sure all that occurs timely. So this is really where we can take the input, like pump run times from SCADA, and it can change the dates of some of the requests that we have. So like if we have pumps that are running longer than others, it will change the maintenance of those to be quicker than other ones. So really, it's a very dynamic system that we've done a pilot with, and we really are happy with. We'd like to move forward with that one.
That system, could that system save us money?
I think it will, yes. So we've spent a great deal this year on, for instance, the generator at our influent pump station. We went to use it one day and it stopped working, right? We went to use it when the power went out. We had a lightning strike. And it's because that we've never performed maintenance on that in years and years, right? So this would be that continual reminder of that maintenance to be done. It would be divvied amongst our appropriate personnel to do that. We would be able to plan out days better, maintenance that equipment so we don't have a failure and then an unexpected occurrence of, expenditures that we have to follow through with.
Yeah, Michelle mentioned a vibratory analysis. So when you have a pump, the impeller will rotate at really high speed. Sometimes those impellers will get out of balance and they'll start to vibrate, making it less efficient. This is just a simple example, but so if you have data to show that, you can go and then proactively maintain it or repair it. Right. So some of those vibrations are really difficult to even sense. So this would help with that and many other pieces of the plant operation.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm asking because I know the data on the slide wasn't there.
Wasn't correct. Yeah.
Is this something that could be used in the future at the next water
Yes.
plant? It could be.
Yeah, so we would, this is the initial implementation of the program, and then our intention is to also use it at the water plant, and then with all of our pump stations in the system as well. And then it would just be adding those assets as they're constructed.
We're going through an evaluation right now of software packages in general. So that's going to continue, and this is just kind of in there as a place should we want to go down a path. So anyway.
So the next one we've got is the Biosolids Manager. So this is really, I know you all have taken preliminary tours of the plant, and our ribbon cutting is scheduled soon, but that our plant is really an expansive piece of property right now, and it's got two kind of separate divisions. And what we're really looking to do is to kind of have a leader of the solids division in addition to the leader we have of the liquid side, is what we're calling it. When issues arise and it's just geographically hard to kind of, make that run over there to the superintendent, but also to have someone who's really familiar with that equipment, who is trained and, can mentor new staff on that, who can take, control over all of the analysis that have to be done and make those changes with the optimization in mind. So this is it would be a reclassification of one of our existing operators on first shift. That's what that number is for. So the next one is so kind of in looking at splitting those two things, we have looking at creating solids operators and liquids operators. So the one thing we've noticed about the solid side is that when you're dealing with high pressures and high temperatures, things can change quickly. Very rapidly. On the liquid side, where you're more of a biological process, things change slowly. I mean, biology doesn't move that fast, right? So it's a little bit, we're able to kind of assess, pivot over there a little bit slower. But on the solid side, when you're dealing with fast moving, high vibration equipment, 400 PSI of steam and really high temperatures, you need to really have people who are certified and able to work on that equipment. And so that's what this is for, is to kind of reclassify those to where we can pay them a little bit more, because we think this is a really more of a mechanical industrial process dealing with that equipment. There's a little bit of process involved with it, biology, but not as much as the more mechanical. Keeping, boilers take a lot of inspection every hour. We have to inspect it to make sure it's, within those ranges.
So I do want to point out, we're going to take another look at the $108,000 there. We believe that to be high. So, but that number is likely going to change in the heading downward. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so the next one we have is for another new fleet vehicle. And so we have in the past couple of years, historically, we have contracted out all of the restaurant inspections we do around the city. So every restaurant gets inspected from, Sperry's and all the way down to, McDonald's. Everything their grease trap gets inspected. Some of their just holistic, BM, best management practices for operations, get inspected. We have slowly started to bring some of those into our realm. And so we have our pretreatment coordinator that's doing those, but we don't have, he's got to kind of beg and borrow for a vehicle to take out to do those inspections. So I think this year we're actually taking all of them. We had a slow transition. This year we're taking all of them on. Which is it's when you think about all the restaurants within the city, right? He's inspecting almost every day. And then, that's going to be just a vehicle that stays at the plant. But then kind of in addition to making the best cost out of it, we'd like for the biosolids manager to be able to take that home at night, because he would essentially be on call. There was a couple times during the inclement weather that we had some people who live farther out who couldn't get in, and that really short-staffed some of the plant operations that we had. So I have that listed in here. We obviously most the vehicles we buy are four-wheel drive, so we don't anticipate that being an issue anymore.
What are you on some kind of a state contract or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one we've got is so this is the administration building at the reclamation facility right now. And I'm sure you all have been out there, but you may not have been into this room a little bit. This building just needs a little bit of love. It was constructed in 1975, and we've not really touched it since then. This enhancement is actually in conjunction with one that Facilities is putting in to look at the locker rooms and the bathroom in there. So the Facilities one, there's the shower drain doesn't work, and then there's really no private space for changing. And with this new equipment, we've had some spills, and operators haven't been able to take showers and change. So we've just thrown away a lot of clothes. So for this one, for our department, the kitchen isn't really operable. The windows are, not really efficient right now. And we're just looking to kind of make this space a little bit better for our folks to live in, right? I mean, the operator room that we have right now, when we have staff meetings, we all kind of cram in there. It's not really that conducive to having a good workspace. Let's see, the next one we've got is, so these are new solids operators. So in order to have kind of full coverage, we've really determined that we need 3 people per shift. And so taking the existing people we have, and so those folks on liquids, which we can get by with 1 to 2 people on shift. This is really 3 people, 2 people on shift, but then 3 people to kind of cover those weekends, because we work 5 days a week. Well, it's 7 days a week, but we work 5 with 2 days of a weekend. I guess I didn't say that correctly. So this is the request of 3 new biosolids operators. We found that second shift is the hardest for us to cover. So those are mainly on that shift. So the next one we've got is a fleet vehicle. So one of the overfills that Eric authorized earlier this year was it was 2 maintenance technicians, which one of them is Ross, who has done a great job with kind of assessing the electrical and communications. So we have all of this equipment that communicates back into our central SCADA system. And he doesn't really have a vehicle that he can go around. He's actually done a lot of work at the water plant with helping them with some of their valve communications. And this is kind of a vehicle to help him be able to transport that back and forth. He's done some work at pump stations as well, and we have to, he has to borrow a car and then transport everything and then make trips back if he doesn't have anything. It's almost like a rolling stock room that we would look to have. This would not be a take-home vehicle, also, just to clarify that as well. Okay, so the next one is, so in talking, kind of going off of buildings that need a little bit of love out there, this is the old solids building. So we used to, before, we got the new process, we process solids in the building that's directly across from the admin. It's a brick building. We had belt presses, which just essentially squeezed the water out of the solids, and then we hauled it off. Well, as part of the construction contract, the Kiewit removed all of those belt presses, and it's now kind of this building, and there's really good bones in it. It's just not very pretty. And I talked about when we have we don't really have a good gathering space for our folks, and we're also looking to, as we add additional staff, is kind of just as continuing to grow. We don't really have good places for these people to sit, with kind of kiosks to do TrackStar and to do some of these other things. So because there was solids in there and they weren't stabilized, there's a significant amount of corrosion, we think, on some of the metal and window frames. So this is the cost of kind of getting us to the point where we can then develop a better, so looking into all the electrical equipment and doing some of the demo to get us to a point where we can start looking at a proposal to remodel. There's some, this is a quote that we've gotten that we're hoping to bring down a little bit, but this is, in general, we've talked to a couple different electricians who would look at this, kind of do an evaluation. We're also, in the bottom of this building, we're also looking to how to create an inventory room for the plant as well. So we have, as part of the spare parts for the new construction, we had a lot of those in the specs, those requirements. We don't really have a place to store them. That's kind of like a card catalog, right? The old timey. So we've gotten some makeshift shelves and have, our oil and, and kind of different valves and stuff, but we don't really have a good place for it. It's in between kind of these cabinets and some pump, pedestals and stuff. So it's really going to allow us to kind of just revamp our operations a little bit and get a little bit more organized, and kind of improve the quality of life for our operators out there. Let's see. So these next ones we've got are just, those are kind of the main ones that I had. These next ones we've got, we have a rubber track skid steer. So we use these a lot. The current one we have has extensive damage to the hydraulic system that we've had our fleet department look at. The next one is a rubber track mini excavator. So rubber track, they allow us to kind of work in smaller spaces a little bit more delicately and not disrupt as many lawns as you would with steel tracks. We have a new tandem axle dump truck, which is a replacement. We ordered one in 2022 and it's not been delivered, so we wanted to see if we could put our new order in because we don't anticipate it coming for quite a while. And then the last one we have is a new CCTV camera that would be truck mounted. So right now we have a van, which is, it houses all of the camera equipment, and that van can't go off road to some of the easements that we have for some of the really hard to get to sewer. So if we had a truck mounted camera that would allow us, 4-wheel drive to get off road, we would also have two, which would allow us to tackle, different mains at once and be a little bit more efficient with what we were looking at. It's coming off the list. Yeah. So I guess that last one, there's, if you look at number 14, there's a replacement 6-inch bypass pump. We're going to take that off the list because we're going to redo some things that we've got. I guess I should have communicated that clearly. All right. So the next one is just the summary of all of those and the cost. So obviously, the things in here that we've outlined, kind of allow our staff, our staffing to continue to provide the quality of life that, our residents have. We're simultaneously working with our cost of service study as well. And I know that finance has talked a lot about incorporating some of those in here. Let's see. Thank you for your support. And do you have any questions?
I do have one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you were given the example earlier, and this is not just exclusive to your presentation. This is, Eric may be able to speak to this, or Michael. When you're talking about the gentleman who is going around to the different restaurants to do the inspections, and he's having to catch a ride with somebody else, kind of get around or reserve the truck for that day. Do we have a process or a policy already in place for personal or use of personal vehicles for mileage reimbursement?
We do allow for mileage reimbursement. However, I think the preference is to use a city vehicle because there's some additional complications if there's an incident. And I don't know the details and ins and outs of it. We'd have to get with HR, but I think it's been recommended that we use a city vehicle whenever possible. So that's why,
I would think you'd have some insurance liability issues as our expert with insurance.
Yeah. So
Smile and agree to.
Patrick probably knows a lot more about this than I. So, but yeah, the
I
preference
approve a lot of mileage expenses on a regular basis.
Understand.
Weekly, hundreds of miles. So that's why I was wondering how we did that right now.
Yeah.
My question, is related to I sent it to the city administrator. But I've read a few articles here lately about cybersecurity in our water system, and just would encourage you and the department as well as our IT resources. I know y'all are on top of that, but I think that risk continues to evolve, and if it's in the newspapers, it's, or I don't guess it's actually in the news. If it's on the internet in the news periodicals that I read, I think it's probably something that's in the industry a big deal. But I don't need a report necessarily. But I think as we look at, but I don't know that I've ever seen any kind of, and maybe our IT stuff on the enhancements for IT, falls within this. But if there are cybersecurity things and that kind of thing, because this is a critical, obviously, infrastructure, and just being on the utility board, I guess taking the budget and finance hat off and thinking about, just kind of those evolving risks. And again, this is kind of maybe in the vein here, but there's no enhancements for it. But maybe we've already doing what we need to do. So I think that should be a priority for a utility board to protect the, that piece of it. So just.
Agreed. I think it was about a year ago, the comptroller required that utilities in the state submit a cybersecurity plan. And we brought that item in front of you all. It was a resolution to approve the plan. The plan wasn't attached because we didn't want that to be public.
Exactly.
So we do have a plan. IT is really kind of the keeper of that. And it does include the facilities that are in water management, facilities across the city. So
plan kind of include, I don't know, and the plan's great. I got a lot of clients with plans. They still get, hit. But even redundancies, I don't know if there's any kind of third party, do we have a plan? Does that plan like our cyber response, or is it operational response, or is it both? And you don't have to get in details, but I guess if something happens and we get caught and we're up here and we find, I want to have asked at least the question that, what are we doing and can we do more and should we do more? And because that to me also would be a priority from just knowing how severe these things can get. And once it happens and your citizens don't get water, just get your phones ready.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think they would want to know that we've asked those questions and have at least are in the know that that's what's happening in your industry.
Yeah, I know the other Jason Potts, that's at the forefront of his mind daily. And I know they have taken a lot of provisions to ensure that we're secure. I don't know the details about that. Christine, I don't know if you can allude to anything since it's in your group, but
I would mention, of course, that this is a little bit of a dance response because while we work on, we do work on this very strategically. There's certainly an element of we don't want to talk in specifics, but as far as, and this relates back to our budget conversation at the start of this meeting, the request to reinstate the assistant director position of infrastructure in the IT department that many of you voted as a top 10 priority. That would be a position that part of that job description is security. And right now we have a couple of different positions that are sharing security duties, and that would become a cornerstone of that position. Having that position reinstated is security, cybersecurity. So I will give that as an example of something that our IT department has requested specifically to enhance the capabilities within our IT department to support all of the city departments in the area of cybersecurity.
I'll just say that, and of course, I don't want our network here in the city hall and our billing of various things, project plans to be inaccessible. But what I really don't want is people's faucets not to turn on because we didn't do what we needed to do and there was an attack and we could have done something to prevent it. So I'm not asking for details. I'm just calling that to the forefront and making sure that if there is something in the next budget year, even as the budget year progresses and the threats evolve, I don't think, those kinds of things we need to address promptly, and I'm sure the other aldermen would agree that, especially in our utility infrastructure, you know.
Could I speak to that a little bit too, or just add a little bit?
It's always an ever evolving piece, and we try to use both internal capacity and review, but also we have outside resources we work with as well. We do periodic audits of how we are doing things and look at the way that works. So it is a tough one to always be on top of, because the bad guys keep changing their techniques, quite frankly. So we know we need to do that. We look at both what the capacities we have in-house and how we leverage other expertise from outside. And it's in water, but it's in everything we do too. So it is something we all think a lot about and work on, and especially our IT team, but every aspect of our operations has some exposure because technology is integrated in everything we do. So we hear you and we share the same concern, and we do try to both use our capacity internally, but also leverage other outside experts that can help give us insight and also bring fresh eyes sometimes to what we do and how we do it. So you've hit on an important topic and one we keep looking at.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, are we ready for item 6, monthly reports?
Yes, sir.
Margaret, you're up.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I will finish as usual for the day. Monthly reports. While Michael pulls those up. As usual, sales tax is holding strong with a year-over-year increase of last year for the month of January. Sales received in March was $25,000. I also wanted to point out with road impact fees, we are doing well. The beginning of the year was a rough start, but of course we all know it's dependent on development, but they are now significantly higher than last year and running course with budget. So.
I'd like to just add a comment about sales tax, because we talked quite a bit last committee meeting about sales tax and some of the reporting challenges for fiscal year 24. I do want to comment on January of 2024, because we had the winter weather event about 8 days there that interrupted normal economic activity. And so I've talked to other colleagues throughout the state, especially the parts of the state that experienced about the same duration of economic disruption that we did. And so it's while this is not scientific, I do think that the winter weather did affect our January sales tax, as there was a disruption in business travel. Certainly there was disruptions in economic activity locally. And so while we are glad that we certainly did not have a decline in January, we were less than 1% of the year before. And so that doesn't happen too often, to have an 8-day winter weather event in Tennessee, but it can happen, and we had it. So I think as we notate what happened in that month going forward, we'll notate that January 2024 had a disruption that was pretty significant for us. So I also just want to give a little bit of a preview. I've asked some of my folks to work together to prepare a report on property tax collections for our May meeting. Just to property tax collections are historically stable. Our property taxes are collected by Karen Paris, our Williamson County trustee, who does a fantastic job. But we are going to do I think we're going to do a little report on property tax collections for this committee in the month of May, to give you a little bit more flavor. And probably that time of year of budget's a good time to talk about property tax collections. So not that we haven't had anything out of the ordinary this year, but that's something that I'd like us to give you all some more information about.
That's all you have? Any questions? Michael, do you have anything else? Eric, and are you either one?
We're set from my standpoint. Thank you.
All right.
Just a reminder, your next meeting is May 9th at 3 p.m. and Eric will be back live and in person to present the fiscal 25 city administrator's recommended budget.
All right. Look at that smile. See that smile? That's a Boston smile right there.
Will that be the meeting you would do the property tax item too, or?
It is. We actually have we've got a couple other business items that we're going to kind of get back to some regular business. We're going to have our purchasing manager is going to be with us for an item in May, and we'll do a little bit of regular business in addition to budget. So,
Well, if we have no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned.